Hi guys, I'm Jess from Little Biscuit. I'm just going to run through a little video tutorial of working with your Little Biscuit cookie mix. Hopefully this video will just give you a little bit more guidance if you're stuck with how to follow the instructions on the back of the packet. So to start off with, of course, you've got your cookie mix. And even if you're not using this cookie mix, some of these tips and tricks can apply to whatever recipe you're using for sugar cookies. So the packet does say just to add butter and water, but I also do make the recommendation to add vanilla bean paste. Now the reason I make this recommendation is because it's my personal preference, but I do enjoy that richer vanilla taste in the cookie, and I also love seeing that speck of vanilla bean through the dough and the cookie itself. So it's up to you. You can buy vanilla bean paste from any grocery store. I use Queen's vanilla bean paste, so if you see this on special at the store, maybe grab some of that. But again, if you don't have it on hand, you certainly don't need to use it. The recipe will be just fine without it. So to begin with, I've chopped up my butter and I've just had it on the table and it's just at room temperature now. So I'm just going to mix that in my mixer first. Okay, so I've beat my butter until it's nice and smooth. I'm just going to give it a little scrape down the sides with a spatula, and now I'm going to add my cookie mix followed by my water, and then in this case I'm also adding the vanilla bean paste. So again, I'll just turn over to the mixer so you can see what's happening. So as you can see, my mix is on a low setting here, and it's just combining the butter and the dry mix together. It might look a little bit crummy to begin with, but just be patient. It will come together and it'll look like a dough. So as you can see there, it's now come together into a dough. So now I'm just going to add the water. And I'm also just going to add my vanilla bean paste here. Alright guys, so I've added the water and I've also added the vanilla beans. Sorry, I just had to put the camera down whilst I use both hands to do the vanilla bean paste. So I'm just going to turn that off now. And as you can see, if you have a look nice and close, there's the vanilla bean speck through that cookie dough there. And you can see it's all come together off the sides now. So that's ready for us to work with. So I'll switch to another view so you can see what we're doing on the bench top. Okay guys, so I've got my clean bench top here and I've pulled my dough off the mixer, and I've broken it in half, and now I've got half of the mixture here with me. So what I'm going to do is lay down a sheet of baking paper. I'm going to pop that on that there, just give it a little squash down, and then I'm just going to grab another sheet of baking paper, pop that on top. So grab your rolling pin. I mentioned on my equipment page that I like to use this Joseph rolling pin. And if you do a lot of baking, or if you enjoy baking, I certainly recommend this because rolling out to the guides or the size that you want, it just makes it so much easier with this. So I've got mine set onto my 6mm guide. So this has just got a little screw end and it's got an extra measurement, but it's got 4 measurements down on the 6mm one. So if you don't have one of these, that's completely fine. You can use just a regular rolling pin, or whatever you use to normally roll out dough. So I'll just roll this out and then I'll show you sort of how thick 6mm is. I'll also show you, so I've rolled that out to 6mm, but I'll also show you what it looks like. It's really not a very thick cookie, so if you're struggling to guess what 6mm looks like, it's really not very thick at all. It's quite a thin cookie. So I think that will just help achieve a nice balance in flavour with cookie to icing ratio. So we don't want a thick cookie, and we also want to make sure that it cooks evenly all the way through. So that's why we don't want a really big, fat, thick cookie. So my recommendation is, especially because we're working in Australian climate, by the time you've got a room temperature butter, you've mixed it, you've rolled it out, the dough can become quite soft. So my recommendation is to actually just pop it on a baking tray, just so it's easy to transport or stick on top of a few things in your fridge, and just chill it for about 10 or so minutes, just till it's a bit firmer. That way when you're cutting your shapes, it will just make it a little bit easier for them to have that nice sharp edge. So yeah, pop it in your fridge. If you don't have time, you can cut your shapes out. They might just not have that nice sharp edge, but you can definitely do it without chilling. But yeah, definitely my recommendation is just to chill it for 10 or so minutes, and it will definitely make a difference in holding that sharp edge on your cookie when you bake it. So now I've chilled my dough for a little while. It's nice and firm, so I'm just going to pop it off the tray there. Got it here in front of me. What you can do is actually use this piece of baking paper to pop it onto your tray and get it ready to bake your cookies. So once you cut them out, you can pop them straight onto the tray. I actually like to use a silicone mat for baking, so I'm going to pop that on my tray now. And then once I've cut the cookies, I can pop them straight onto the tray to bake. So I'll just cut out, I'm going to try and fit about, well, I'm going to put about 6 on my tray for this example. And just depending on the size of your tray, you can put more on or less on. So you see that one just popped out with the cutter. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So just pull off the excess around it and pick them up. And just give it a little jig as well, so that it just sort of cuts away a nice clean line. So you might find that sometimes there'll be that little bit of excess on the edge. You can just pat that down. So if you've just got like a little rough edge on there, you can just give it a little pat down like that. All right. So I've got my cookies ready on my sheet, and I'm going to pop this into the oven on 140 degrees. So on the instructions, it does tell you to bake them from 12 to 15 minutes. So it does vary from oven to oven, so you'll just have to sort of have a guess with your oven. If you know that it gets a little bit hotter, then maybe you want to turn the temperature down or cook for a little bit less time. But the longer you cook it, the crunchier your cookie is going to be. So I like to have a crunchy cookie personally, so I'm going to cook mine for about 15 minutes in my oven. What I'll do is pop it in the oven, cook it up, bring it out, and I'll show you the consistency of my cookie. And while that's cooking, I've got my excess dough that were the offcuts from my shapes that I cut. So I'm just going to roll that back together, knead it back together into a little ball, and I'm going to roll it out through with the baking paper again, pop it in the fridge, chill it, cut it again. So I'm just going to keep repeating that process until I've finished all my dough. So I've baked my cookies now. I've let them cool completely on the tray, and I just wanted to show you the color of this cookie. So it hasn't gone an overly golden color, which a lot of baking, they can say, bake until golden brown. In this instance, it's not really going to get to a golden brown color. So what I would do is actually do a little test bake. Put one cookie in the oven on your settings, cook it for 15 minutes, pull it out, let it cool completely, and then taste it. So find out what the texture and consistency is on your oven settings. So if the cookie's too soft and you want it to be crunchy, obviously bake it for a little bit longer. If it's too crunchy, then bake it for a little less time. So, but doing the test bake just means you're not going to waste a whole batch of cookies if you're not completely happy with the consistency of your cookie. So I highly recommend doing that just because ovens can be so different. So once you've got your cookies all done, you can again just let them cool completely, and then you'll be ready to start decorating with your fondant. So I've actually created a separate video with tips on how to work with fondant. So if you want a bit of guidance on that, please go and check out that video.